Number 1, transmission failure. Alright, let's talk about the transmission, which is a pretty important subject because it's the issue that have been haunting owners for years. If you're driving one of these or thinking about buying one, you need to know about this. The problem? Well, it's a CVT transmission made by Jatco. These are notorious for failing, and it's not just a few isolated cases. First, let's break down the symptoms. Owners report shuddering, jerking, and hesitation during acceleration. Some say it feels like the transmission is slipping or struggling to engage. Others describe a whining noise that gets loud as the problem gets worse. One owner of Nissan Rogue forum.com said, "It feels like the car is dragging itself, especially when going uphill." When this happens, you usually get the check engine, and if you scan, you get the P0846 code, which is transmission fluid pressure sensor, or the P0776 code, which is pressure control solenoid. The root cause? Well, Nissan CVTs are prone to overheating and fluid degradation. The transmission fluid breaks down faster than it should, leading to poor lubrication and increased wear and internal components. Over time, this causes the transmission to fail, sometimes as early as 60,000 miles. And here's the kicker: replacing the CVT isn't cheap. Repairs are usually between $3,500 to $5,000. So if the car is too old, well, forget about it. People are just scrapping it and calling it a loss. In fact, they extended the CVT warranty on some models to up to 10 years or 120 miles because Nissan was aware of this problem. Obviously, this model is old enough to not have this warranty anymore, since it's older than 10 years old. But even with this extension, many owners have reported being denied coverage for repairs, leaving them struck with the bill. One Reddit user on the Nissan Rogue forum said, "The dealer told me my transmission was out of spec, but not broken enough to qualify for warranty replacement. 2 weeks later, it completely died." What can you do if you own one of these Nissan Rogues? Well, first, change the CVT fluid regularly. Every 30,000 miles is a good rule of thumb. Use only Nissan-approved fluid, as the aftermarket options can cause more harm than good. Second, install an auxiliary cooler if you live in a hot climate or do a lot of towing. Overheating is a major contributor to this failure, and a cooler can help this. If you're buying a used Nissan Rogue from this generation, get the transmission inspected by a mechanic who knows Nissan CVTs. Look for service records showing regular fluid changes. And honestly, if the transmission hasn't been replaced yet or rebuilt, you need to be prepared mentally that this may happen to you sooner than later. This is a major headache. Usually when you get that, you get the code P0420, which indicates that the catalytic converter isn't operating efficiently. But here's the thing. The converter itself isn't always the root cause. It's often just a symptom of the issue. One of the most common culprits is the engine misfires. When the engine misfires, unburned fuel makes it into the exhaust system, overheating the catalytic converter and damaging it over time. Faulty ignition coils or worn spark plugs are often also to blame. One owner on a Nissan Rogue forums said, "I kept getting the P0420 code, and after replacing the catalytic converter, I found out the real problem was the bad ignition coil. Fixing that stopped the issue for good." Another factor is the oxygen sensor failure. The oxygen sensor monitors the exhaust gases and help regulate the air-fuel mixture. If the sensor goes bad, it can send incorrect data to the engine control unit, the ECU, causing the engine to run too rich or too lean. This imbalance can damage the catalytic converter over time. Replacing a faulty oxygen sensor is far cheaper than replacing the converter, so it's always worth checking this first. Now, if the catalytic converter is indeed the problem, you're looking at a costly repair of many thousands, depending on the labor costs. Aftermarket options are cheaper, but they may not last as long or meet emission standards, depending where you live. And if you don't address this underlying issue, like misfires or bad sensor, you could end up replacing the converter again in the future. Number 3, steering wheel vibration or shaking. This issue is particularly noticeable at higher speeds, usually above 50 miles per hour, and it can make driving feel unsettling or even unsafe. The root cause are often tied to the suspension, tires, or brakes, and pinpointing the exact source requires some detective work. Some owners have noted that the Rogue alignment settings, particularly in the earlier models, tend to be a cause of uneven tire wear if not monitored closely. This can lead to vibration that feels like they're coming from the steering wheel. With proper tire rotation and alignment, this can be solved. The Rogue seems to be more sensitive to these issues than other SUVs of its class. Brake-related issues can also cause steering wheel vibration, particularly if the shaking happens when you apply the brakes. Wrapped rotors are a common offender here. When the rotors become uneven due to heat or wear, they create a pulsating sensation in the braking pedal or steering wheel. Resurfacing or replacing the rotors usually fixes this problem, but it's important to address it quickly to avoid further damage. Less commonly, the issue could stem from the wheel alignment or even a damaged drive shaft. Misaligned wheels can cause uneven tire wear and vibration, while a failing drive shaft can create a shuddering sensation, especially during acceleration. Number 4. Power steering pump failure. When this happens, it can make driving feels like a workout, especially at lower speeds or when trying to park. The symptoms are hard to ignore. Difficulty turning the steering wheel, a whining or groaning noise when steering, and sometimes even fluid leaks under the vehicle. The root cause of these failure often comes down to the power steering fluid and the pump itself. Over time, the fluid can break down or become contaminated, leading to increased wear on the pump's internal components. If the fluid isn't flushed or replaced at regular intervals, something may happen. The pump can overheat and fail prematurely. One owner on the NissanRogueForum.com shared, "I didn't even know the power steering fluid needed to be changed. By that time, I noticed the whining noise and the pump failed." Another factor is leaks in the power steering system. The Rogue's power steering system relies on a series of hoses and seals that can degrade over time, especially in areas with extreme temperatures. A small leak might not seem like a big deal at first, but it can lead to low fluid levels, which puts extra strain on the pump. If you notice puddles of red or brown fluids under your Rogue, it's worth taking a look at the power steering system right away. Replacing a failed power steering pump isn't very cheap. Some owners opt for a remanufactured one to save money, but there's always a risk of getting a unit that doesn't last as long as the new one. Number 5. Air conditioning problems. Many complaints are about this, and there are some specific quirks with this generation of the Rogue that makes it more prone to certain failures. If you're dealing with a weak cooling, strange noises, or a complete lack of cold air, you're not alone, and the root cause might be tied to a few model-specific weaknesses. One of the most common issues is the compressor failure. The AC compressor in the Rogue is known to fail fast, often due to clutch wear or internal seal leaks. When the compressor goes bad, you're gonna typically hear a loud grinding or squeaking noise from the AC when you turn it on, and the system will blow warm air. Some owners have reported compressor failures as early as 60,000 miles, which is very unusual. Another problem to the Rogue is the refrigerant leaks. The AC system relies on a network of hoses and seals that can degrade over time. Leaks often occur at the condenser or evaporator core, both of which are expensive to replace. If you notice that your AC works intermittently or requires frequent recharging of refrigerant, there's likely a leak somewhere in the system. The blower motor is another weak point. Some owners have reported issues with the blower motor failing or making unusual noises, which can reduce airflow even if the AC is otherwise functioning. This is often caused by debris getting into the system or the motor itself wearing out. Replacing the blower motor isn't the most expensive repair, but it can be a hassle to access, as it's located behind the dashboard. Number 6. Rust and corrosion. This is especially true for people living in regions where there's a harsh winter or coastal areas where salt exposure is high. While rust can affect any vehicle over time, not only the Rogue, obviously, the Rogue seems to have a few specific trouble spots that make it more vulnerable than some other models in its class. If you're seeing orange bubbles under the paint or flaky metal on the undercarriage, it's worth addressing sooner than later, before it becomes a structural issue. One of the most common areas for rust on the Rogue is where the rear wheel wells is located. Owners frequently report rust starting around the edges of the wheel arches where dirt and moisture tend to accumulate abnormally. Over time, this can spread to the quarter panels if left untreated. The undercarriage is another hotspot for corrosion. Components like the exhaust system, suspension parts, and frame rails are particularly susceptible, especially in the areas where road salt is used during winter. Rust here can be more than just cosmetic. It can compromise the structural integrity of the vehicle if it gets bad enough. Some owners have reported needing to replace the entire section of the exhaust system due to rust-related damage. Another problem area is the hood and door edges. Paint, chips, and scratches in these areas can expose metal underneath, leading to rust that spreads quickly if not treated. The Rogue's paint quality has been criticized by some owners for being thin and prone to chipping, which doesn't help the matter. Number 7. Electrical issues. One of the most common complaints involve the power windows. Owners frequently report windows that stop working intermittently or fail altogether. It is often due to the faulty window regulators or the window switch, which can wear over time, especially the buttons that control the window of the driver. In some cases, the problem is traced back to wiring harnesses that have become corroded or damaged, particularly in the door panels where moisture accumulates. Another frequent issue is with the dashboard lights and gauges. Some owners have experienced problems where the instrument cluster lights flicker, go dim, or stop completely. This can make it difficult to read critical information like speed, fuel level, engine temperature, stuff like that. In some cases, the issue is caused by failing instrument cluster circuit board, while in other it's due to loose or corroded wiring connection behind the dashboard. The door locks are another trouble spot. Many owners report issue with the power door locks failing to operate correctly, either not locking or unlocking, or not working at all. This is often linked to faulty actuators or wiring problems with the door. The Rogue audio system is also prone to electrical gremlins. Owners have reported problems with the radio or infotainment system that is cutting out or having display errors. Now, the good news about this problem or these problems is that parts are quite cheap, especially on eBay. Since the Rogue, the first generation Rogue, is old enough, you can find dashboard displays for less than $50, or even an instrument dash cluster for less than $150. It doesn't require special tools really. As long as you have a few screwdrivers, the job can be done in less than an hour and a half. So this is it. Do you agree with my list? Do you want to add something? Please leave a comment down below. Subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next video.